and happy to have you to our Agile Breakfast. And yeah, today's topic is remote high-performing teams. And yeah, for the first thing I want to share with you is that yeah, we will record the session, so people who can't join will be able to have a look at it afterwards. And also we have a YouTube channel where we then share it. So yeah, if you missed a session or a session from before, we have a YouTube channel, and yeah, you can see the videos from the last times. Then, of course, if you want to work with us, you can contact us throughout our website, Agile by Experience, or throughout our email, agile@gmail.com. And we're always happy to work together and see how we can help out each other, or just to connect and see, hey, if you have some question in between, just let us know. We're always happy to answer. Great. Then today's breakfast, sorry. So first, to introduce ourselves, as always, we're three coaches from three different companies almost. So it's Shiva, Manuel, and me. And yeah, what we try to do is like only give you like small bits and make you hungry for more, but not to provide a training where say, hey, you get some kind of certificate or what. So we're not like training you guys here. It's just like to share our experience and make you hungry for more, and then say, hey, perhaps yeah, there's something you can help you with, or we can work together, or just to give you something that you can use on a daily basis. And today, yeah, today is a special day because we have a guest, and our guest today is Diane Gombart. And yeah, a big warm welcome, and we're happy to have you, Diane. And yeah, I would say off to you, Diane.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Manuel. Thank you, Shiva, for the opportunity and for inviting me on this. I have to say, I'm a bit nervous, like with all the people online. So please bear with me, bear with my French accent as well. I hope not to lose my English. Okay, so I'm just going to say a few words about me. Basically, I'm an Agile coach, currently working with Sapo, which is a full remote company for a few years now. In contrary to what Manuel and Samuel were just saying, I choose actually like to work in remote before like the pandemic. So I started working full remote since like October 2019. I love the remote setup. It's bringing its own challenge, of course, but I really like as well like this way of style. This style of like living for me. So basically today we're going to talk about a topic which I guess we could talk about, for hours, which is building a high-performing team, and especially with the context we have, building a high-performing team in remote, because like with the pandemic that is stretching and stretching, and like the significant amount of number of companies that choose already or announced that like they're choosing a more like remote setup, or at least like an hybrid model. Remote is here to stay. So the first thing I would like actually to ask the audience, and because I like to taste a little bit like the water and see how easy it is, like for you, I'd like to take a minute and think about building a high-performing team in remote. When you hear this sentence, what do you think about it? It is a myth or it is a reality?
We're again using menti.com for this, so feel free to go to menti.com. The code's right on top, 5101810. Just add that code and you must be able to then vote on this. It's interesting, the numbers, Diane. When
Yes,
you
it
started,
is really interesting. I was not expecting this, to be honest.
I wanted to ask you when you started, let's say 2 years ago, being remote, if you had asked the same question, would you see similar results or a very different one?
No, I don't think so. Even like most of my like former colleague as well, agile coaches, in collocated mode, were telling me I don't see how we can do our job, in remote, basically. And I never agree with this, obviously, because I think as long as I remember, I always wanted, to work in remote. And it's because like it goes as well with my core values. If we have time, we can talk about it like later as well at the end of like this webinar. So yeah, no, I was like, I think 1 year ago or 1.5 years ago, the result would have been totally different. But I'm really happy actually to see this. Like I'm a remote enthusiastic, so I'm like, this is amazing.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think the positives of a pandemic, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So basically, when we talk about building high-performing team, I would like first to stop, on a definition of actually what is a team, because this is really important. A team is not a group of people. It's not co-workers. It's not an alliance. A team really consists basically of two or more people that interact, share common goals, and they need each other. And this is really important. It's like they share common goals and that like they need each other. They have as well like defined roles and responsibility, and they are part of an organizational context, and there's set boundaries, and there might be some dependencies as well. That's why sometimes like it's bringing a lot of complexities. But this is really important, like to stop sometimes on like the definition of a team. And with like the definition of a team as well, there's another thing that is important is like to know where our team is currently at. So I guess most of you, like will know this schema, this chart, which is like the different stage of a team. The different stage of a team are actually like part of the studies of Bruce Tuckman, who is like an American researcher, psychologist. He did a lot of studies on group dynamics and group development. And basically it came with like 4 first stages, which are like the four first we see: forming, storming, norming, performing. And he added like later on the adjourning one as well. So what are those different stages? So basically it's like when we form a team, when we start a team, when we have a team, okay? When we start with a team, first people tend to be more quiet, see who is who, have like some formalities. There's not really like a bounding of like the team member yet, and people are still treating as a stranger. As a result of this, like the dynamic sometimes feel a little bit flat, basically. The storming stage is basically the second stage of development of a team. The members start to communicate their feeling. There might be some tension as well, some conflict that start to rise, whereas before we didn't have any conflict. Things start maybe to be like a little bit more explicit as well. They resist some control by group leader, and sometimes might show like some hostilities. The norming phase basically is like when generally like people start to feel as a team. So basically before, they might not see themselves being part of the team, even though on the paper, we're saying you're a team. But deep down, people don't feel it. In the norming stage, people feel part of the team. They realize they can achieve work if they accept other opinions. They realize as well that like to achieve work effectively, they need the others. In the performing stage, basically, the team works in an open, trusting atmosphere. This is where we want to go, basically. This is like our goal in generally. The atmosphere is trusting, work is fun, the hierarchy, the title, it doesn't make really so much important. The different opinion of different like team members are all valued. The later stage is like, of course, teams like they got a lot of changes along their life. There's a stage which like we reach sometimes, which is like the adjourning one, which basically is, okay, either like the product evolved and over needs, the team is dismantled, and basically it consists of like conducting an assessment of what happened. Here it says the year implement, but like it can be like another period of time. Obviously, we recognize, each of our members' contribution, which we should not wait just the adjourning stage for this, by the way. What is as well really important to notice is between the different, so these 5 different stages are not linear. They're not sequential. They're not going from one to each other, okay? You can have a team, for example, and after a period of time, they're more in the norming phase. Something happened, organizational changes. You withdraw a member to a team, you had a member, they go back to forming. Or they sometimes, like the storming kind of can be super quick and they go like to norming again or something like this. So it's not, even like a performing team, if a performing team got under a change or a massive change, they can go back to forming. So it's like, it's really important that's like to understand as well, like this is not sequential. It's really dynamic. Having said that, this is really important, I think, for all of us, to take some minutes. So let's take a minute to think about basically our team, our current team, and which stage do you think your current team is at? Okay. Can you go to the other slide, please? Okay. So this one. So I would like you to take a minute, and based on what I explain, which stage do you think your team is at?
When they're voting, Diane, a question I had was, when you're really looking at this, it also looks like, creating a team is a lot of work as well, right? It's not
It is.
people together and say, oh, you're a team. No, this seems to be a lot of work we need to put in to create a team.
It is. And that's the subject of like the next slide as well. Creating teams, building teams. It's not something like this. It doesn't happen like in 1 minute saying, okay, now you're this group of people, you're a team. You need to work with each other. Teamwork is actually like it is actually an individual skills as well. Like sometimes not everyone can succeed at teamwork. This is important to recognize it as well.
I mean, and then another question that always comes up is, how many people form a team? Is there a number, a magic number that you've seen in your experience?
In terms of numbers, of course, the more people we have, the more relationship, line of relationship and line of communication we have. So this is, above a certain number, of course, it's more a group of people than a team actually, due to this line of communication and the relationship between members. So, one of the agile principle as well is like to keep the team nimble, basically, nimble enough, but that has enough skills to achieve the work and to produce, like valuable increment after each cycle of development, or after every time like they develop something. So by experience, I would say more than 10 people is really complicated. And already 10 people is complicated, to be honest.
Totally, yeah. I guess, yeah, I've had similar experiences as well, yeah. And remote makes it even more difficult, I guess, yeah.
Right, yeah. What I think we also read a lot or like get along is like this number about like saying it's 7 plus minus 2. So like something between 5 and 9. So that also correlates with what you said, Diane. So also from my experience, I think like, yeah, 5 to 7 is quite good. If it's lower or more, then, perhaps you don't have enough experience in the team, or it's just like then, as you said, Diane, like too many lines of communication and like not so well developed relationships. So yeah, totally agree.
Exactly. So this is really interesting what we have on the screen right now. So we have like actually most of the people voted like norming and performing. This is really interesting. We have some like storming and forming as well. And an adjourning, that's like interesting, really good. If someone wants to talk a little bit more about this later on, just let us know. Okay, so here what I would like to present. So now that like we went to know really on the concept of what is a team and the different stages of a team. So here's like I would like to present you basically like the pillar to build a team. So basically, there's 4 main components based on the company's culture. So one thing as well, we won't talk about it during this webinar, but like it could be an entire subject by itself, which is like the company's culture. The company's culture is the foundation, of course, for the pillar of like a high-performing team. On this pillar, we have like 3 of them that like for me sustain basically like the team's outcomes, which is like what we want to achieve. We want to achieve like high value team's outcomes. So the first one is the purpose. I think you got like as well an Agile Breakfast already in January about it. So go to the YouTube channel. I'm doing some like advertisement, guys. And then we have like 2 of them that we will talk today about, which are structures and relationship. Structure can be as well be called like processes, for example. And relationship, of course, it's people. So let's go to the structure one. And let's see why the structure is actually important. So the structure is important because it makes role and expectation on each other being clear. The meeting and other work formats are effective, you know, the team discuss about them, the planning, the participation, how they do, you know, like decision making. Do they do retrospective every 2 weeks? Do they do it like every week? Do they do it every like month or something like this? How do they want to continuous learning as well? Everything, all of this needs to be explicit. Team leader style as well is really important when there's like a manager of a team, for example. The style needs to be to adapt to meet basically like the team needs, not every style, for example, can be over time in all the situation basically like the best. And the team, of course, you know, like needs access to a supportive context, especially in remote, you know, in remote when like tools are actually like taking a strong importance for communication. Without the tool, we can communicate, and that's where the issue is. In terms of like structure as well, is good to define how do we communicate as a team, you know. When we have a problem, for example, mainly we're trying, for example, at Sapo to use way more writing communication. So we're all taking time. So for example, instead of I have a problem, instead of me setting up, you know, like a Zoom meeting where I actually have, I don't know, 10 people and I set up 1 hour. 1 hour multiplied by 10 people is actually 10 hours, you know, of like everyone. And I take 1 hour to talk about my problem. And most of the time we don't have enough time, you know, like to discuss actually like solution. So instead of this, if I take me 1 hour to write down, like to really explain, I write down a document, I write down where is my problem, what are like, for example, the possible solution that I thought about and what I would like to discuss with them. And then I ask for input, and then for the decision making, we can have a meeting then. This is way more efficient. But if I didn't discuss this with the team, maybe it might feel weird or something like this. I'm gonna as well like talk to you about, for example, an anecdote. This one, I got it when I was in collocated mode. But it's kind of like to show why structure is as well like super important. So basically, I'm French. I lived a few years in Ireland, and I took a lot of the habits, you know, of working the same as like my Irish colleagues. I arrived in Spain in Barcelona a few years ago. I started to work with a team, and they had this social implicit rule that like after a meeting, they were gonna go to a coffee and they were gonna talk. But coming from a different point of view, from a different culture, for example, I didn't have, you know, like this habit. And what I was doing, me, after a meeting, for example, I need to rest. So instead of going with them to have a coffee, I was going the other way, and I was going back at my computer. I was going back a little bit into my world, having some me time. So it basically created a huge problem between me and the team. And it's not because I was bad, and it's not because they were bad. It's just because we didn't talk about it. So we didn't talk about actually how we liked to work together. So it took like a really interesting turn, because then it took several, for example, like one-on-one with the different team members for me to pinpoint actually like the problem, and where I had like a dissonance basically with the team. Once I knew this, so they expressed actually their needs, I expressed mine, we find a little bit of a compromise. They knew for like the first few minutes I needed to kind of like have some fresh air for myself, and then I was gonna join them. So in the end, all good. But it could have been really, really bad just for a coffee. In remote, for example, what is really important is as well, where do we work from? So what are our working hours, especially for distributed team? At Sapo, we have a lot of like teams everywhere. We have some team members in India. We have a lot of team members in Europe, in South Africa, and in South America as well. We have like one of like the latest team I'm working with, we have team members from all the time zone. This is something that we want to work on from an organizational level because it's really challenging. But then we had as well, at a team level to make this explicit. So where each of us, we are working from, what are our time zone, what are our working hours as well, and when do we know, or how do we know when someone is available or not? For example, at Sapo, we are using a lot the Slack emoji nearby the status to indicate I'm sick, I'm not available, or anything else, basically. Can we go to the other slide? Okay. So, no, the one before. So here, basically, having said all of this, I would like to ask you another question, of course. And when you're thinking about your team, again, I would like to ask you about your working agreement. And I would like to know if your working agreements are making basically the implicit explicit.
Okay, so I have another question as people are voting. I was thinking, going remote, I think this is the biggest change that we could look at, right? A lot of this before was implicit, and now to make it explicit. And one of our core values in Agile is also about transparency. And when you go remote, the transparency becomes lesser. And we need to make attempts to do that explicitly, right? For example, probably a wiki page, shared documents where you want to start putting things together so that people can see. And all this gets into your working agreements on how you want to make things transparent, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Actually, good point, Shiva. As I also remember, is like when we went on like remote work, the demand for like online whiteboard was rising, and everybody was like, "Oh, we need like some boards where we can like draw or put things together." Like because there were no flip charts anymore, no whiteboards like in the office, so people were demanding, hey, some space where they can share information and therefore make it explicit and transparent.
Oh, yes, definitely. So in my current experience, so at Sapo, for example, what we started to do as well is like in our Confluence, we started to have like for the different teams, like a part of like meet the team with like the name of the team members for the team as well. So it's joining actually like the purpose pillar, which is defining basically our mission and our vision as a team. We are going toward like OKRs as well, so having like our OKRs being written down, so and for everyone to be able to access it. In terms of the information as well, for example, for the different work we are doing, so we opened way more like the Jira. So the Jira, the different Jira projects are accessible actually like to the different teams as well. And we have like some dashboard that consolidates all the project. Of course, not everything is perfect. We still have a lot of work to do on this, but at least like we want to provide more information on this as well. As I said, we are really having like a push from as well like the management team to write way more. So we write way more. We have like, you know, like a lot of discussion thread, for example, in Slack. When I have like, for example, when I have the temptation, because even I'm used to remote, but me too, I have the temptation of, oh, I have a question. Let me just, you know, set up a Zoom.
Yeah.
But then after like, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 Zoom, you know, a day, your brain is fried and like you basically cannot do anything.
Yeah.
So the Zoom fatigue is quite real. Sometimes there's the Slack fatigue as well, because like if you receive like way too much, you know, messages from different parts of the company, at the end of the day, you had the feeling you did nothing and you just, you know, like replied your Slack messages. So really, it's really like asynchronous, you know, communication, basically, right? And communication is really important. Setting up, you know, Google Docs, sending emails as well. I think we're seeing like comeback of the emails in a good way, you know, something that is useful, you know, like make it short, try to get your communication effective, and but as well, you know, for example, in the subject, are you sending for just for information? Do you need an action? You know, what are you expecting, you know, from the people?
Diane, I have a question for you. I was just by chance, I was talking with a friend about like a similar topic a couple of weeks ago, and then he was telling me, yes, on my team we did something like this, right? We made explicit all our working agreements, right? So then the team had some working agreements, and they feel more relaxed, right? Like they are common understood rules that they are all following, and they know what to expect. But then something happens, which is a manager wants to come and break one of the rules, right? So I don't remember the example, but for example, I don't know, they say, okay, during the morning, we don't answer emails. We just switch off Outlook, we focus on work, and then after 1 p.m., we open Outlook and that's our agreement, right? And then the manager comes and says, well, I'm sending emails and you are not answering. So he was asking me, what would you do? Would you tell the manager to respect the team working agreement and wait until 1 p.m.? Or because he's a manager, he's allowed, let's say, to disrupt this working agreement of the team? And I was like, oh, I don't know what to say initially, right? I could say, well, follow the agreement, and I need to help the team to enforce it, right? But then at the same time, okay, he's a manager, he may want to say something important. So I was a little bit 50-50, and I would like to know your opinion, or if you have any experience on this.
So one thing first is like, if I were him, I would like to look for more information from the manager, basically. So I would like to understand really, you know, like behind his request, which is basically, you know, like for the team to answer the email, what are the needs, you know? What is he missing when the team doesn't answer, you know? What type of emails as well, you know, does he send? Are they just like about status update, for example, or there were, I don't know, where there is some cases, you know, where actually like the emails were really important in terms of like, I don't know, organizational decision, and we needed some input from the team or something like this. So I would really like to get more information. And I think, you know, when we are a coach of a team, we need to look more for this, and not making any assumption, you know, that like, oh, he's a manager, so he's exerting, you know, like authority on the team and he wants to micromanage. No, there might be a good reason actually why is asking for this. So I would really ask, what are the needs basically like behind this request first, and then when I understand the needs, see actually with the team, like bringing the problem with the team, and okay, what can we do? Can we have a middle ground? We can organize as well a discussion, like a conversation between the manager and the team for everyone, to feel expressed and heard.
Yeah, it's clear. Thank you. I guess somebody wanted to ask something.
Yes, I see Carolina raising her hand.
Yeah, hi. I'm working as a people manager at Flixbus, and since the topic was related to the team and the manager, I also wanted to just add, when I got to teams, I also had an expectation session with the teams about our relationship or how we want to work. Of course, there's always room for improvement, so I'm not saying it's perfect, but that for me would have been important, and it might also be a solution that can work well for the case that you were discussing, to also have these agreements for the team internally, but also then with the team and the manager of how that relationship or that collaboration will go. And we always found, the room for me to share updates, and we had those agreements already with the team.
Yes, that's really important. And actually, Carolina, like you're going on to the next slide.
Cool.
So, okay,
Wonderful.
so
I was about to say the same, that probably this all gets into the people part. Yeah.
yes, okay. So basically here, you have an example. So by the way, this is a real example that like I did at Sapo. So one of like the capture. For this, I used like the Google Jamboard. So basically, it's like to set up role expectation and working agreements. And how we can do this? Well, there's basically this small exercise, which is for like the different role that you have in a team, including managers. I love to do it, including manager, because you kind of like killed two birds with one stone. You get set up a role expectation between the team members, and the leader can put their input as well, of course, for each different role, and people can give to the leader their input on what are they expecting on their leader or on their manager, and how do they all work together. So how this workshop, this role expectation basically work. So as you can see, there's like three different quadrants, let's say, for like the role expectation. So the first one on top is basically for the role that you target. So here you have like the product owner. It can be like product owner, like, I don't know, like developer, like the QA, the database specialist, for example. And then you have like some arrow, as you can see. So it's like basically people go onto like the different roles. They put their input as a sticky note. So you can use like Google Jamboard for this, or Miro. And then what you ask to everyone is to review and to, for example, if there's one sticky note that should actually is not just for the product owner role, for example, I don't know, whichever, like provide technical insight and feature feasibility to SM and PM. SM here doesn't mean like Scrum Master. We had another role that was the name SM. So if this one, for example, is actually apply to every team members, the sticky note should be moved, like it should apply to all of us. If someone doesn't agree with any sticky note, then we need to put it, in the quadrant that we need to discuss this. So what is really great with actually like this exercise is like you can start it asynchronously. So you can set it up, for example, in your Miro and your Google Jamboard. You can ask people to fill it out, asynchronously. So first of all, you ask them, like to concentrate, for example, on the upper quadrant. I like to put more question as well, to guide really like the thought a little bit of people, and not to have things like too generic. So for example, what are the expectations, the responsibilities, the outcomes, for example, what are we waiting, you know, from like as the outcomes from every different roles. And then I ask people, of course, you know, like to review everything, but you know, what we need to discuss. So everything that goes basically to like the quadrant, we need to discuss this, we really discuss it, and we look, you know, like how actually, like if there's agreement here, or like if it's for everyone, is this really just for one role, or sometimes it's just we need to discuss this because we didn't understand, you know, the wording of the person. Everything that stays on top is basically, okay, that means we all agree on this. And this is, I really insist on this as well. It's like, that means we all agree and everyone, we understand what it means. And then it should apply to all of us. This is actually a good base. If I've seen some implicit agreement in the slide before, so it should apply to all of us is actually a good first base for working agreements. And one thing as well I wanted to say, it's working agreements, it's a living thing. Okay, it's not something that like you start at the beginning, for example, of a team, or and then it is set in stone. It's always evolving, and periodically we need to review our set of working agreements. We can do it as part of like some retrospective, or we can do it as part of like another like workshop with the team if needed. But like I want to let you know that like this is not something that is set in stone. Basically, this is important. And voila. So that's basically in terms of the structure pillar, basically there's a lot of other exercises, and we could talk about it basically, you know, like for kind of like ages as well. I really wanted like to share this exercise first because this is one of the most important that I use a lot. Actually, it's, I think, one of the exercise I use the most with teams to set up like working agreement and make clear role expectation. So the other pillar I really like to talk about is relationship. And relationship is actually one of the pillars sometimes that is like, oh, it's touchy feeling, but no, because actually relationship is super important for psychological safety. Psychological safety, I mean, there's like a ton of study. There's like this like huge study from Google, which like basically for high performing team, what do they have in common? Psychological safety. So here we really like developing relationship between team members makes people feel safe to take risk, to be vulnerable in front of each other, having more open communication, and constantly build trust. Constructive feedback is shared as well. Feedback is an amazing tool that like we don't use enough. How to receive feedback and how to give feedback. That's our two components that are really important as well when we want to develop relationship between team members. And as well, like developing relationship allow actually team members to hold each other accountable for plans and action, you know. When I don't know someone and someone, you know, try to hold me accountable for something, what would be my initial reaction? You know, my initial reaction might be defense, you know, being like, what this person is telling me. If I know the person, you know, I know like the intention of the person are good, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, no problem. You know, I accept way more. So that's why relationship is super important. I think there's the question in the chat now.
Yeah, right. So I will read it out loud. So the question is like, how do you make sure the working agreements are always visible for the whole team in a remote environment?
So it depends the team actually. Most of the team is on their Confluence page. So they publish their like working agreements like publicly on their Confluence page. Over they can have like a mirror, like a board, basically a team board, where they have actually like their team agreement and where they always, you know, like work on it. But yeah, mainly like for example at Zappo, mainly we use like working agreements with Confluence. Or sometimes I used more in the context of kind of like project, I put it actually in the topic of the Slack channel.
Yeah.
Do you feel it's part of your job as a agile coach, or if the team has a scrum master, part of his job to remind the team this agreement, or if they see that the team is breaking one of the agreements, remind them that the agreement is there, or just leave them alone for themselves to, let's say, recognize it and hopefully go back to the agreement? I don't know if you see what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would say that depends on the maturity of the team. If the team is quite new, for example, or is in the middle of like storming phase, they need a little bit more support, you know, from the agile coach, and a little bit, sometimes a little bit more of guidance. So in that kind of case, when they break working agreements, or some working agreements, you know, don't make sense anymore, then I would be, you know, like the one saying like, guys, by the way, we had this working agreement last time and we're not respecting it. What do you think about it, basically? And then generally triggers a conversation. When the team is mature enough, they actually say, okay, this we said it last time, but actually we're saying that, like, no, it's not for us, for example, you know, or we need to transform it. So I have like one of the team, for example, that they know each other for quite a few months now, and they are like this, basically. So even, for example, I think it was yesterday, actually, I had a conversation with them, and at the daily, they were saying, okay, we need to review our definition of done, because like we are having this, and actually like it doesn't match, you know, like our definition of done, so we need to review it. And they did it like themselves. So it really depends on the maturity of the team.
Hey, so we have another question. So let's perhaps continue. So the question is, as a team leader, how do you work with a team where the members are also in other teams and their time is split between various teams? How do you make sure that they don't neglect responsibilities in your team? Any particular thoughts or tips on this?
Thank you, Margot. We're working together.
Nice.
Okay. Well, first of all, there's a thing here. It's like sometimes we don't acknowledge the situation, that like the team members' time is split, you know. We're kind of like, okay, we are in our own bubble on this context of a team, and we just assume that people, you know, have like full capacity, or we're going into a mode where it seems we assume this. It's like really making this explicit again. Remember, anything that is implicit has to be made explicit. And talk about the problem, basically, because here there's no one solution will fit all. It's like we need to talk about, okay, how many, for example, you know, like on how many teams are they? Sometimes there's something that is not sustainable as well, you know, when we might ask people, you know, to be on 3, 4, 5 team, you know, or like a lot of different subjects. It's something that across the time is not sustainable and can burn down as well, burn out people. And burnout in remote, by the way, is something really, really real as well. And we've seen it a lot last year. There was a lot of cases of like burnout that exploded everywhere. So here there might be actually a need for escalation on like the number basically of teams that you are. Then after, if there's like, for example, it's quite common that I came across like the scenarios of having like someone that is split between 2 teams. Well, then this needs to be explicit, and this as well needs to be talk, for example, with like this team member and the rest of the team on, okay, how do we intend to manage the situation? I don't know, is the person gonna like work on our part of the team in the morning or in his morning, or certain days? How do we, you know, intend basically like to achieve the work. And then as well, how do we want, to know when the person is available for our project, or for our project, for our team? Do we want, to have like a Slack status, for example, to reflect, when he's in our team or in the other team? That can be a solution as well,
It just reminds me of what we do as well as coaches. We are part of multiple teams, and it's the same thing. And what we try to do is set explicit expectations, like you said, Diane. And it's generally telling the teams, where do you want my help, or where can I be available? Letting people know that, some days I'm not going to be in your dailies, in your plannings, in your retros, I'm going to be in another team. So when there is a transparency and when you have clear working agreements, I think that helps.
Yep.
I guess the most obvious answer is avoid it. Let's not have people in multiple teams. But here I'm also saying that that's not the case. It's not avoidable, and that's why we're having this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, obviously, the best is like not to have this situation.
Yeah.
But we have constraints,
Totally agree. Understand that. Yes.
Okay, so I don't know if we have a lot of time to go on the relationship topic. But basically, so one of the things that is really important in relationship is, so I don't know, how do we want to do it actually? Like, do we want to stop here for the moment, or do we want to go a little bit further?
I was thinking that it'll be helpful to probably have, give them an activity which they could probably go back and try, if you think that's possible in the next 5 to 10 minutes.
Yes, totally. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So basically, one of like the base I like to use when I'm in with a new team is like actually to express core values. So our core values are basically values that like define who we are. They are like wired to our mindset. It's something that can come from our culture or our natural behavior, but that's something basically when we are in an environment that don't respect one or more of our core values, we have a tendency to feel really bad and not happy. We are unmotivated, we're not engaged. So core values are basically really important. And it happened to me that I was in some environment, I worked in some environment, and where I had like no motivation. I'm always having like more some energy and smiling in generally, and like pushing people and or being like the eternal lost optimistic. And in this environment, I was not. And it was because I realized that like it was not a problem in itself with the company, but it was more because like the environment of the company was not for me. It was not like in sync with my core values. So the core values are really important to know your core values, but it's as well important to know the core values of your team members, or at least to understand, what they are. Can we go to the other slide? So here, I'd like actually to ask you quickly on to evaluate basically on 1 to 6, how much do you know the core values of your team members? So the person you always work with, how much do you think you know their core values? Like for example, is justice their first core value, or independence? Teamwork, respect.
I think, Diane, there's a problem with Menti. This is not available.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, something is going on with Menti because the options are not available there online.
Oh, that's sad. Okay, well, then let's go to the other slide. Well, everyone try to think about it, individually as well. Yeah, you can answer in the chat if you want. But like basically because of like for sake of time as well, I just would like to give you this quick exercise actually that I ran with some of the team. So this is like quite small. But basically what we did is like, I explained the exercise and ask the question, as well. So based on our past behavior, how we acted in some or how we felt in some situation, let's each of us take time to identify our core values. And I was like, okay, let's try to identify, between 3 and 5. And you can see, for example, I don't know if you don't really see it well, but there's actually my name here. And for me, for example, the being independent, being autonomous is my first core value. If I don't have autonomy, independence, I feel really low. I'm not happy. Then it really depends. I know I have another team member, for example, it's more about, okay, it likes challenge, getting challenged, stimulated, if he's not stimulated or challenged, in his work, for example, is bored and he doesn't like what he's doing anymore. So this is really interesting for the team members and as well for the manager, to know about it, because then it's allowed to understand in some situation, what is happening, for example, for some team member, and how we can help each other, to get the team member better, or motivation high up again. I put some link as well because the core value list was coming from the management 3.0 website, and there's as well you can do it as well with the moving motivators that are management 3.0 as well. These are really interesting in conversation or in 101, for example, to really understand each other and what motivates everyone at work.
I once I did an exercise similar to what you're proposing, and was very interesting, not only because we agree on the team values, we were discussing our values, what is important for each team member, but then we all agree on the team values, right? And that helped us to, on a daily basis, to really have to be in our center, let's say. For example, we had one value which was calm. We said we are calm, we analyze things, we don't jump into conclusions, or we don't run and try to solve everything at the same time. And then a few weeks later comes this incident. And there were a couple of guys who were tempted to immediately drop everything, let's go to fix this incident. And we said, wait, our value, team value, is being calm. So we don't drop everything. We take our time, we analyze, and we don't start, trying to fix the code immediately. Let's take our time. And that was great because we were all sitting around this computer, taking our time, looking into this incident, and then turned out to be, let's say, much more simple than expected, right? But the initial reaction was panic, and then we have a big banner on the wall saying calm, and then we say, wait, our value is being calm, so let's respect and follow our value, right? And was useful in practical terms, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And that's why it's super useful. I remember, for example, at a moment before doing this exercise, we had a new team members, and there was a little bit some conflict, between her and me. And actually doing this exercise, with everyone and with her as well, it allowed me, to understand more from her perspective, and especially to stop assuming bad intention. This is assuming, making assumption is basically killing us. It's when we don't know the person, we have a tendency, or we don't know the value, we might have a tendency actually to assume, something, oh, it's because she's doing this because it's me, like an aggression or an attack, which actually in 99% of the case are not at all this. So by knowing more as well, like the core values of like the people you work with, you know, it's kind of like mitigate that kind of like assumption and potential like conflict, which those type of conflict are not helpful actually for the team.
We have a few minutes left, and maybe you want to answer some questions that people may have.
Yes, of course. I would like just to go on the last slide because I just want to say, okay, is that all that is needed? Of course, no. And there's a way more, you know, like to explore. Building a high-performing team is a journey, even in a remote. I think we don't have all the answer yet, even though we have a lot of clues and we start to be like way more efficient and everything. So that was just to conclude. So if anyone has like some question.
Okay, we have like 3 minutes, so I don't know how easy it's going to be. There's one question on the chat about core values. Being aware of our core values is very personal. It can happen that people themselves are not sure about their own. How would you deal with such a situation?
Well, first of all, for example, like this exercise can be done asynchronously, and I actually like encourage to do it asynchronously because then you give, you know, people time with themselves. So it's like really like take time with yourself. Take time with yourself to, well, introspect. Okay, think about situation in term when this happened. How did you feel? And then how did this feeling, you know, like relate to one of the values, for example, in the list? Generally, when you read like the list of values, there's some of them that will jump straight away, you know, in your eye, basically in your mind. Then you can take time with yourself, you know, to think, is this really that? And of course, you know, core values are very personal and might not be all the time the same. There's some of them that might be really, really more core. Like for me, independence and autonomy is the core of me. But sometimes there's some others, you know, that change depending the situation, the mood I am, or something like this, you know, which we could argue that they're not really core value in the end, but they tend to rotate, like the same tend to rotate as like in across like the in terms of like importance. So yeah, I would say like take time basically.
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing to do because core values also help you to help you how to behave on a daily basis. It's not only with teams, it's also with relationships, with like any stranger on the street. It reflects yourself on how you behave in every life's situation. So I think it's one of the major things that you need to know about yourself. And once you made them explicit, it helps you a lot to realize which ones your core values are, because I think most of us haven't never really like thought about it or read through all the values that exist and really understand, hey, which one do I relate most to?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Great. I guess that we are already there. I wish to say thank you, Diane, for joining us, for sharing all your experience and knowledge. It was great to have you here as our first guest. So was great. Thank you very much. I hope you can join us also again, or part of our guests. Yeah, great. And thank you everybody for joining. As always, we will send an email with all the presentation, and you have the video also on YouTube. So if you want to share with friends or with people, feel free to do it. And yeah, see you in 1 month, always the last week of the month. So for another Agile Breakfast.
Yeah, thanks a lot to everybody for joining, and see you next month, hopefully.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. It was really great. And see you soon.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.